With a fighting game, we can pit any characters against each other with their amazing skills. Some have exceptional martial arts skills, some can use abilities involving energy, science, and just fantasy that we cannot see in reality, and some have a great arsenal of weapons. However, for all these characters that could realistically fight in their respective universes with these abilities and powers, there occasionally is one that slips through the cracks that should not be there, usually intentionally on part of the game's creators, since these characters are meant for comedic value or just to annoy the player. These characters are known as joke characters, since they are typically designed to be only comedic, as opposed to characters that could seriously win a fight, but have a humorous side. These joke characters are not always designed to win, mainly because they are unskilled, cowards, or have some aspect to their personality that makes them weaker than the rest of the cast. Other times they are fit to fight, but there is something about the character that classifies them as a gag. It's like there's some sort of April Fool's joke. So to celebrate these fools, I'm going to go over the top 10 joke characters in fighting games. Number 10. Mocap from Mortal Kombat. Mocap is one of the least popular characters in Mortal Kombat. While I understand he's meant to be a joke, his design could have just been done better. He's just so bland. Mocap, as his name suggests, is supposed to be a guy who does motion capture for video games, which is how the movements of Mortal Kombat characters are created. This guy basically works at Midway, which somehow exists in the Mortal Kombat universe despite the fact they used to develop the game. Basically, he's bland because he's a character before they add anything that makes a character unique. I respect the attempt to honor longtime Mocap employee Carlos Pacina, who has been with Mortal Kombat since the start playing Raiden in the first game. The execution of this idea just could have been better if they didn't give him generic moves like this bland fireball or bland flip kick. I don't know, maybe have his motion capture balls fire lasers or something. Yeah, I don't know, just a start. Number 9. Toro and Kuro and Street Fighter Cross Tekken. For a game that's supposed to be a crossover with two of the most iconic franchises in fighting games, there were a lot of comedic guest characters in this game. I don't need to go into bad box art Mega Man or Pac-Man for this, but at least they were owned by the companies who were involved in making the game. No one really expected or even wanted Toro and Kuro. They don't exactly have any new playstyles to offer. They just have smaller hitboxes and the lowest health in the game. Toro plays like Ryu, and Kuro plays like Kazuya, with a few minor differences and less combo potential. Their attacks have the same properties as those characters, despite their height indicating everything would hit low. Overhead attacks still hit his overhead, but visually they hit the opponent's knees. They are funny if you want to annoy your opponent, but they don't fit in with the Street Fighter or Tekken universe. Mainly because, well, look at them. How did a cat get the demonic powers of the devil gene? I've gone all this time without saying who they are. They are the Japanese mascots for the PlayStation, and they have appeared in a few games, meaning many people won't know who they are outside of Japan. Especially considering this game was released before PlayStation All-Stars, where they fit in better with the cast. Based on the story of these two games, Toro wants to fight so he can become human, which is funny because Kuro doesn't care about that, despite the fact his story is that he wants to flirt with all the ladies. Then again, that could just mean the female cats. Or he doesn't care about the species difference. The one thing I can respect about these guys is that they are fans of fighting games and other video games in general. So to them, being in this game is like a fan's dream to be playable with all these powers that they don't normally have. Number 8 is Pepsi Man and Fighting Vipers. Fighting Vipers was a fighting game released in the arcades in Japan in 1995. A year later, when it was ported to the Sega Saturn in the Japanese version only, they included a little surprise. Pepsi Man, the Japanese mascot for Pepsi. This might seem like shameless product placement, but his character is just so silly and inane, I can't see it taken seriously. Look at all the other characters in this game. They're all normal humans. There's no subtle way of including a man completely made out of metal whose power relates to a beloved soft drink in a game like this. Going off the tone of the Japanese Pepsi Man commercials, this inclusion should be comedic, since those commercials are really just meant to be funny and entertain you and advertise Pepsi. Even looking at the character bios in Fighting Vipers, Pepsi Man has a comedic one. His specialty is to quench one's thirst. If this was meant to be serious, someone might have lost their job. But if this was meant to be hilarious, A+. Well, maybe just A because Pepsi Man did not have nearly enough Pepsi in his attacks. Number 7. Phoenix Wright from Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Phoenix Wright is an ace attorney. Phoenix Wright can even be considered a detective, but one thing he cannot be considered is a fighter. However, he manages to make do in UMVC 3. He is one of the worst characters in the game, but you could still potentially win with him if you try your hardest, even though he could be considered a joke character. Plenty of effort was put into making his playstyle on the developer's side to make him feel like Phoenix Wright, which is why I only consider him a partial joke character, since the main joke about him is he fights accidentally, mainly by looking for clues, getting frustrated, or just sneezing. However, he doesn't just fight you accidentally. His secretary Maya helps him, and he finds evidence for his case in the middle of the fight. How does that help him? Well, that enables him to fight you with that evidence and with paperwork. After that, he can reach his turnabout mode by showing us words hurt, and then he shows you the finger point of justice, and his ultimate move is he prosecutes you. Yeah, I love that this character is in the game. Number 6, the world champ, Mr. Satan, or Hercules as he's known in the English releases, for all the Dragon Ball Z video games that he's in. The way he plays in these games is similar to how he is characterized in the anime. For those of you who don't know, he is the world martial arts champ, but is significantly weaker than the main heroes and villains of the series. He's even tried to challenge some of them, showing how weak he is compared to them. The thing is, he's the strongest of the normal humans without any powers, and he has real skills. He's just enormously outclassed in both the anime and the games, making him a joke character. He'd be strong in many other fighting games. He can even do a Shoryuken, supporting that last statement. In the games, his special moves leave opponents nearly unharmed unless he pulls out a few tricks based on what he did in the show. All these punches with no damage. A fan favorite attack he has in some games is his Game Boy bomb, which he uses in the Budokai series, where after seeing that his strongest punch is ineffective, he offers a gift to the opponent that he or she will always find amusing, even though I couldn't see anyone actually falling for this, and then he sets off the bomb once they start playing, sometimes to his disadvantage. The weird thing about him being a joke character is that his own daughter Videl, who is around his level of strength, maybe even a bit stronger than him, will be unaffected by his moves just like the other characters are, and he'll even give his daughter the bomb. However, if Videl uses her super move or Gohan comes to her rescue, he'll get all mad at Hercule for trying to hurt Videl, followed by Gohan pummeling him, even though we just saw that that punch was ineffective. I tell you, no respect for the champ. Number 5. Fukui from Skullgirls. She can fight like the rest of the cast in this game without any gimmicks. Her joke character origins are actually from her creation and backstory. She's an obvious palette swap of the character Philia. Fukui was introduced as a new character for an April Fool's Day prank by the game's creators in 2014. She spoofed clone characters in fighting games that had some moveset variation from other characters, but mostly reused moves and animations despite the fact that they were advertised as hyped up new characters. The thing is, Skullgirls fans actually loved Fukui since she did have differences in her playstyle from Philia, she was not hyped up at all, and she was still a new character for a game that needed more. It's also clear that her similarity to Philia is in jest. For example, her pre-fight image is the same as Philia's, only she has sort of a pouty face and sparkles surrounding her. As a result of her popularity, Lab-Zero made her a permanent member of Skullgirls, but kept some of her gag origins, like making her a hidden selectable character that was not much of a secret. They even gave her a backstory to explain why she has these green fizzy bubbles surrounding her. Fukui is the fusion of two warrior souls that the villain Brain Drain experimented with in his clone of Philia. So not only is she a clone of Philia in terms of moveset, but she's a literal clone of Philia as well. If you want this backstory though, don't go looking into her story mode for it. The story mode is also a joke, showing that she's some sort of nightmare of Philia. Fukui's story ends with her beating Philia, putting on a Philia mask, at least I hope that's a mask, and claiming Philia's place in the world, only to have Philia wake up and realize it was all a dream. Or was it? If Fukui is real, she has no respect for dental hygiene wasting all that toothpaste. At least she made friends with Umbrella and Annie living in that mirror. Number 4. Rollin Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2. Her moves were the same as Mega Man's moves, only they were slower and just not as good, which is fitting because Roll was not built to fight like Mega Man was. She's a housekeeping robot, but Marvel vs. Capcom shows she apparently picked up a few skills after watching Mega Man for over 10 years. She also had a Mega Buster hidden away this entire time. Who knew? However, typically being a gentle robot, it makes sense she's among the worst fighters in the games. Her motive for fighting seems to only be beating the final boss before Mega Man reaches the end of the arcade mode, not that Marvel vs. Capcom was a heavily story-based game series to begin with. It also doesn't stop her from using her robot friends or transforming herself into Mega Roll, which she really should do more often in the Mega Man games. She returns as a more unique joke character in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, where she had cleaning-based attacks with brooms and buckets of water, fitting her role in the Mega Man games. That's Roll R-O-L-E. Number 3. Gunn in Tekken 3. We've seen animal fighters that have mastered some form of martial arts in the Tekken series, like Kuma or Roger. Even Alex was a fighting dinosaur, similar to Gunn. He's similar to Gunn because he's a dinosaur, because Gunn is not one of these animals. In Tekken 3, there were 2 hidden characters that could be considered joke characters, Dr. Boskanovich and Gunn. Dr. Boskanovich, however, can at least be played competently and has normal hitboxes that were much more fair than Gunn's, even though many of his attacks ended with falling, which lowered his hitbox. Also, Dr. Boskanovich fits in the Tekken universe better, and is really no different than putting in other somewhat joke characters like Li-Li's butler or Xiao Yu's friend that likes to take selfies mid-battle. Gunn I can't defend as much. He's a cartoonish dinosaur living in modern times. Of course, that's a bit difficult to use as justification with another dinosaur in the game. But while that dinosaur still fights like a standard Tekken character, Gunn shoots fire and noxious gases, slips under most attacks of opponents, and doesn't seem to care about the final boss's attacks. Unless you're a massive Gunn fan because he's a guest character, he's likely to annoy you. In a way, he's the ultimate joke character since he ignores all game physics and always has that look on his face that says something like, "Oh, what's the big deal? This is easy. You guys are just bad at this game." Number 2. Dan Hibiki from Street Fighter. Just like Street Fighter created the standard grappler and standard zoning character, Street Fighter created the standard joke character. Dan is a parody of 2 characters from Art of Fighting, Ryu Sakazaki and Robert Garcia, since Capcom believed that they were mere imitations of Ryu and Ken. However, Dan has broken off into being his own unique character. Dan has a lot of moveset similarity to that of a Shoto, as in he has the standard fireballs and anti-airs, only they are much weaker and have rip-off names like Gadoken and Koryuken to fit his Sakyo style. Dan is cocky when his attacks hit, and a coward in all other situations. You might even see him tear up once in a while out of fear in some cases. Despite that, he taunts a lot, which is actually a source of his power since they can build him meter in some games. They can also use his meter if you decide to do his super taunt, which costs your entire meter and does not do damage. Nevertheless, Capcom gave Dan a somewhat serious backstory to balance out a bit of his goofiness. In Street Fighter Alpha, he was seeking to beat Sagat, who killed his father Go Hibiki, after Go Hibiki nearly defeated Sagat, but was ultimately killed after damaging Sagat's eye permanently. In Dan's arcade mode, Sagat fakes being defeated since he pities Dan and does not want him to seek vengeance for his father's death during his entire life. As a result, Dan opens up his own dojo, embracing his cockiness and honoring his father. So even though his style of martial arts is significantly weaker than about everyone else's style in Street Fighter, he becomes the teacher to dozens of characters that will likely never become playable for that reason, except for Sakura, but she already knew martial arts before she met Dan. As a joke character though, it's at least good to see his story fleshed out. However, despite being one of the most iconic joke characters, there's one that I think is designed a bit better than Dan as a joke character. If this character was designed as a balanced character, there are some issues. Number 1 is Dompierre from Soul Calibur. The self-proclaimed Libello, world's greatest assassin, invincible duelist, and other titles that are complete lies. He acts as if he's just going to use his fists when he goes into a fight, which is pointless since everyone has mastered some weapon in Soul Calibur, and they are knowingly going into the fight for such a duel. He does have his own weapon though. He has hidden blades, just like Ezio's, only he uses them with less finesse, more trickery, and cheap shots. Dompierre is a joke character because some of his key attacks are random, as in they might be completed normally when they're inputted, or they might end with him hurting himself and dropping the combo. Sometimes he misses the target and hurts himself by punching the ground, or other times he just messes up. He also fakes injuries, which happens beyond the player's control. However, you can still go into different attacks after these fake injuries, which works out for the better. Still, because these attacks are random, you cannot rely on using him seriously. What makes him stand out as a joke character that is entertaining though, is his appearance and personality. Look at that mustache. He's not someone you'd expect to see with all these serious warriors that might crack a joke once in a while, but are dedicated fighters. Who goes into a fight with a top hat, handlebar mustache that points up, and pants that would likely restrict movement and offer no protection? I do admire that mustache though. Dompierre's a frail con artist who relies on catching opponents off guard, which is the only way you could see him realistically fighting in this universe against these characters. The most entertaining thing about Dompierre, though, is in Soul Calibur Broken Destiny, where characters have finishing cinematics called critical finishes. Instead of some cutscene where he overpowers his opponent, Dompierre tells them a story about his sick daughter and how he can't pay for her medicine or operation, so he needs money. I can't say what the story is entirely about since it is sped up to chipmunk speed to signify how long it is with only a few visuals. The finishing move ends with the opponent giving Dompierre their money, as he proclaims Labello's deadliest weapon is his silver tongue. The characters in the picture of the story are actually part of his band of con artists that help him scam people. Come to think of it, is he only fighting to get rich? Why does he enter these battles otherwise? The only character that has a direct relationship with Dompierre is Hilde, since he stole money from her homeland of Wolfkrone, so she's the only one that likely cares about his existence. Well, it's really not that important to know why joke characters exist in these fighting games. They just do. So did I mention your favorite joke character? Did I mention your least favorite joke character? Are there any joke characters that I left off the list? Let me know. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.